COVID really began for me on Wednesday the 18th of March 2020. Until this point I had been working my regular full-time job based in an office, but very mobile as well. I used to work with lots of community groups, youth groups, family groups. My job was really people orientated, and I travelled quite a bit as I covered the whole of North Ayrshire, so I was really used to being really sociable within my job. However, when I went into work that Wednesday morning, I had been off in the Monday and the Tuesday, and obviously was aware of the increasingly worrying situation with COVID. It was everywhere in the media and the news, but I genuinely thought it wasn't going to be as bad as what was expected. I genuinely thought, something would happen or intervene and it wouldn't get as bad as obviously what it evidently did. So I had gone into work that morning and knew immediately from just the atmosphere in the office that something was different, something was dark and worrying for everybody that was in the office that day. So the news reached me that everyone with a pre-existing health condition was to go home and work from home, and this would be for a period of 3 weeks, likely finishing after 3 weeks and being back in the office. But this was required just due to the worrying situation that we were in. Personally, I've got type 1 diabetes and I'm asthmatic, so I was very much in this category. So I took some time gathering my things, laptop, everything that we thought we would need, and saying goodbye to co-workers, things like that, and headed home around about lunchtime on that day. But I remember getting home, sitting on my couch and thinking, this is bizarre and it really is worrying, the extent of what the world is becoming and what that's starting to look like. The next few weeks are very much a blur. The one thing I do remember is that the weather was really, really good. And I remember thinking, well, that's nice. Things are closed. By this point, bars had closed, restaurants, cinemas, all these kind of things. And I thought, at least the weather's nice. People can go out and can enjoy themselves and a wee bit of sunshine. However, this wasn't the case either. Obviously living in the west coast of Scotland, where beaches became really busy, people were travelling for miles from the cities, from Glasgow, from the bigger towns, to the coast to spend some time. They were off from work now, depending on what their position was, and it meant we had really overcrowded car parks, etc. And at the time I had a quite young dog, so was used to walking him for a few miles each day. And we'd usually do that in the beach park area of Irvine. However, I remember driving one day and all the car parks were closed. They had been barricaded. There was not a person in sight, and it really reminded me of some sort of zombie apocalypse movie. That was the first time I think I could truly say I was properly scared about what had happened to the world and what was happening. Personally, I hadn't been affected by the actual virus at this point. No loved ones had caught it. However, you could see the numbers in the news every day of those daily meetings that the Scottish Government had about what the figures looked like, how many people were in hospital, how many people were really violently ill, or unfortunately were passing away from the virus. At this time, when the world was normal, I was part of a committee who organised a local community event. This is called the Marymass Festival, which takes place each year in August in the town of Irvine. It's a 12-day festival, and throughout that 12 days we have tens of thousands of people attending different events. So it became clear round about May time that a decision was going to have to be made on the festival and whether that could go ahead. So the decision was made that Marymass was cancelled for 2020. However, we were really keen to still be able to market in some way. And we're really fortunate that some of our younger members of the committee are really savvy in terms of social media and tech and all these kind of things. I wouldn't say that I'm old myself at 34, however, my skills are definitely not on par with what they were able to do. So we had our first ever virtual Marymass Festival, and the participation from all the communities was absolutely brilliant. We still had our virtual dog show, so people sent in pictures of them and their poochies, even small videos in some examples. And we had classes such as, waggiest tail, or dog that looks most like their owner, all these kind of fun things. And I think the participation levels were just absolutely brilliant from those in the community. It was brilliant. At the time, I lived in a semi-detached house in a relatively nice street with lovely neighbours. However, I felt really, really claustrophobic. I was working from home and, living at home with my dog. Couldn't travel, further than a mile from your house, all of those kind of things. So I actually took the decision to move back to my parents. They live in a walled garden with 7 acres of really nice green space, which really made a difference, certainly for my own well-being. It meant that I had more freedom, with the dog in that outdoor space, whilst also staying within the guidelines and, not coming into contact with anybody. And I could still work from there and, just be as effective from there. And one of the really good things about their house is they have a 10-foot wall right round about their land. So really you had no idea what was happening in the world if the television wasn't on. You could pretend it was a completely normal, nice summer's day and we weren't in this horrible situation type of thing. It was actually during this time that I met my partner out walking my dog one day, and it was one of those just really, brief interactions. He was walking his dog and you get into conversation about the dogs that expand into other things, and then you realised we actually, had quite a lot in common and knew some people in common as well. So having a new lockdown boyfriend was a strange experience as well. However, as things eased, we were able to spend a wee bit more time together, and I remember this being during the August where they did the Eat Out to Help Out. So we were able to go out for dinner, a few times a week in some occasions, which wasn't good for the waistline, but it was good to be able to get out again and speak to people. As things, continued to ease and we moved through the pandemic, we got to know each other a lot better, and it was around about a year later, so it was about October 2021, I moved in with him, and our 2 dogs are now step brothers. And my life is completely different to what it was in 2020. We now live in a nice wee cottage. I've got a bit of space round about us. I'm back living the country life, which I was very much used to previously, before I had to bought my own house. We live just in the outskirts of a lovely wee village, which I feel is just where I was supposed to be. And in some ways I think, had COVID not happened, would I have met him? Would my life look the way that it is just now? Or would it just be the same as what it was, in February 2020, but I'll look a couple of years older. So COVID had not touched me personally, or any of my loved ones, right until November of 2022, when I got what I thought was a cold, however developed, and the next thing I knew, I was in hospital. I had got COVID, and that had resulted in a pulmonary embolism and my lung collapsing. which was an absolutely terrifying experience. But I'm grateful that I had lasted 2.5 years, without catching COVID. I'm grateful that the NHS staff are absolutely brilliant in looking after me in my week in hospital. They provided such a good level of care and support. It was unbelievable, and still, did it with a smile on their face, which must be hugely difficult for them, and it must have been such a difficult environment to work in, throughout this pandemic. However, I spent a week in hospital, some more weeks recovering at home, and I've made a full recovery from that, and I'm really thankful that I'm not, left with any repercussions from COVID, or any long COVID symptoms or anything like that. So after having been quite proud that I had escaped it for such a long time, obviously it got me eventually, as it has done for many, many people.